Today on Newsgirls. Welcome back to the Trump era.
We all know about him pardoning the J6ers, but today we want to dig a little deeper.
There isn't that much widespread reporting on this, so if you've had any experiences with this, please comment below.
Inside a crisis PR firm, Blake says Justin's PR team activated an astroturfing campaign against her.
Were we all manipulated? Did we all fall for this narrative that was fed to us? Or did people take Justin's side organically?
And we tried lab-grown meat.
Right now, the only place that you can buy it at the store is in Singapore, but Upside hopes to have their meat in US grocery stores by next year.
You're all definitely wondering, literally, how do you create fake chicken cells? What is going on here?
Welcome to Newsgirls. I'm Wren.
And I'm Mabel. Let's get into the stories.
It's the first remote Newsgirl segment ever.
Yay!
There's so much going on in Trump's first week, so we're actually recording this Wednesday afternoon to give you the most up-to-date news that you might not have heard of.
So obviously we all know about him pardoning the J6ers, but today we want to dig a little deeper. We all, of course, watched Trump's second inauguration on Monday. He actually gave the longest inaugural address in modern history, making up for the shortest inaugural speech ever in 2017.
This is so different from 2017 when he was not only just new to the office, but politics in general. And he actually only then signed one executive order, but this time around,
President Trump issued dozens of executive orders on his first day in office.
He's experienced now and he knows how to leverage his power and get things done quickly.
He's the oldest president ever sworn in. And we remember that was a big headline with Biden, but no one's really talking about that with Trump.
But some things never change. He actually brought back his infamous Diet Coke button in the Oval Office first thing back on the job. So priorities.
There was $1.2 trillion sitting in the front row at his inauguration. And since we're talking about the tech titans, let's get into the tech updates. So we all know he's officially created Doge and that Vivek is not sticking around to run it with Elon. He's actually going to run for governor of Ohio. And Doge has already been hit with a flurry of lawsuits, so we'll see how that plays out. Trump also announced a $500 billion investment in AI. Basically, OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle are all coming together to plan a joint venture called Stargate.
Is Elon involved in that? Stargate sounds like something that he would do.
It does, but he is not involved in it. I guess 10 data centers for the project are already under construction in Texas, and more are planned.
Very quickly, moving very rapidly, creating over 100,000 American jobs almost immediately.
Trump also signed a 75-day TikTok ban extension, which basically tells the Justice Department not to enforce the TikTok ban for 75 days, giving ByteDance more time to find a buyer.
I wonder if that has anything to do with the fact that he's gained nearly 15 million followers on the app since he joined last year.
On TikTok, users are reporting that TikTok is hiding anti-Trump content in the US, searching for Donald Trump rigged election or voter fraud. And in the US, it says there are no results, but in Europe, there are a ton of results. Same with if you say F Trump, it doesn't populate on TikTok anymore, but if you say F Biden, it does.
Yeah, and there isn't that much widespread reporting on this, so we're doing some digging on our own. So if you've had any experiences with this, please comment below.
Same with Meta. So a lot of Meta users have been reporting that their accounts just were forced to follow Trump and Vance on Facebook or Instagram. They did not press follow themselves. And this actually happened to me on Facebook. I was just scrolling the other day and I saw I was following President Donald J. Trump.
So shifting into immigration, Trump passed a lot of orders when it came to immigration, and none of them were that surprising because he did build his campaign on these promises and said that it was going to be a priority during his term, like declaring a national emergency at the southern border. So what does this mean? To unlock federal funding for border wall construction and potentially to deploy the military National Guard to the border.
Yeah, didn't he take a similar step during his first term when he kind of sidestepped Congress for the border wall?
In that vein, he also shut down the CBP app, which is a mobile app used by migrants to book appointments to appear at ports of entry. And it was the only legal pathway to request asylum at the border. 30,000 appointments through this app for migrants to enter the US in the next 3 weeks, but now no longer available. Trump also suspended the US refugee admissions program, which allowed certain refugees that were fleeing persecution and war to come to the US legally.
And I guess 10,000 refugees who had booked flights to come to the US have had their flights canceled now.
Something that also sent shockwaves was him ending birthright citizenship, which is a legal right to citizenship if you're born in the US. And we're not sure how he's going to do that because birthright citizenship is in the Constitution. It's in the 14th Amendment.
22 states have already sued the Trump administration for trying to end birthright citizenship, and the ACLU has spoken out against it. And this would affect 150,000 kids every year. A judge will actually consider a temporary restraining order against the directive on Thursday, so tomorrow.
And lastly, we have the ICE raids. So the border czar, Tom Homan, said ICE officials have been instructed to begin arresting those that are here illegally, ending a policy that stopped ICE agents to arrest undocumented people at sensitive locations like houses of worship, schools, hospitals, domestic violence and disaster relief shelters. So these people can kind of just go into these places and arrest undocumented immigrants.
I saw this morning Tom Homan told Fox News that ICE agents have already begun raids and have arrested 308 serious criminals just yesterday alone.
What would a person have to do to get a visit from ICE?
For it to be in the country illegally, first of all, I mean, there's nothing in the immigration law that says you got to be convicted of a serious crime to be removed under the INA. So if you're in the country illegally, ICE can visit you. But
So let's get into the climate and health updates because there are a lot of those too.
Yes, so everyone has probably heard of the fact that Trump has pulled the US out of the Paris Climate Agreement again. The US is actually the only country other than Iran, Yemen, and Libya.
We also withdrew from the World Health Organization, and Trump accused them of mishandling the COVID pandemic and having a favorable bias towards China. And the US has been its most influential and greatest funder for 75 years. And experts say this is going to make America less safe. He also declared a national energy emergency. Basically, Biden had approved a waiver for states like California to ban the sale of gas-powered vehicles by 2035. So that's overturned now. And he also is amping up oil and gas drilling in Alaska, including at the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which is very controversial.
Yeah, I wonder why he's declaring it a national energy emergency since the US is already producing more oil and gas than ever.
He also renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. He ordered the Geographic Names Information System, which is the federal catalog that oversees the name of geographic features, to update this change within 30 days. So on all federal maps, it will now say Gulf of America within 30 days.
Does this mean other countries have to call it the Gulf of America too? Like everyone has to change their maps and globes?
Nope. No. And Florida actually already issued an official advisory of the winter system moving through the Gulf of America. Trump has signed orders changing the name of Mount Denali back to Mount McKinley. Basically, when the mountain was first named, it was named Denali, which means Great One in the native language of the people in Alaska. And then it was renamed to honor President McKinley, who had been assassinated in 1901, even though McKinley had never visited Alaska or had any significant ties to the mountain or the state. So then when Obama was president in 2015, he restored the name Denali.
Trump is also going after policies that he sees as woke. That was a part of his campaign promise. And as you've all probably heard, he passed an order designating that there are only two genders. The order is actually titled Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government. So it's under the guise of protecting women. You've also all probably heard that reproductiverights.gov, which is a website that provides resources for reproductive care, went offline during Trump's inauguration.
Oh yeah, I tried to go to it and I just got an error message and it said IP address couldn't be found.
It is clear that they're cleaning up the HHS site. So this was interesting. On the second day of Trump's administration, a search for the term abortion on the website, a lot of them are coming up as like unreadable links. So these changes are kind of reflecting quiet moves on the Trump administration's part on abortion. Like, what are they kind of doing behind the scenes?
Well, they also took down the Spanish version of the White House website and the website for the Office of Gun Violence Prevention.
That takes us to how Trump directed agencies to terminate all policies that promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. So he said in his inauguration that we will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based.
We also found out this morning that he has ordered all federal employees in DEI roles to be placed on paid leave by tonight, by Wednesday evening, and they're set to be fired by the end of the month. He also removed protections for trans people who are in federal prisons. So basically the departments that are running federal prisons or shelters will be directed to protect single-sex spaces for privacy, basically barring trans people from using them.
And the language in the executive order is interesting because it doesn't use the word transgender. It uses the words male and female. And a lot of experts say that's kind of to show the mindset that, you know, transgender people don't exist. It's just men and just women.
I mean, so many of these will be challenged in court. That was a pretty crazy list that we just went through, and we didn't even get to Elon's questionable gesture on stage, or that Trump took down the painting of General Milley, or that Marco Rubio was unanimously confirmed as Secretary of State.
Yeah, there was a lot to get into. It's only been like 3 days.
What's coming up next? So I guess Trump is heading to LA on Friday to survey the fire damage. And later this week, the Senate will vote on whether to confirm Pete Hegseth as defense secretary.
So Trump also says he's going to impose 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada starting February 1st, and 10% on China. And those three countries together account for a third of U.S. trade.
And that's everything you needed to know about Trump's first few days in office. So it might be a while before we see Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni in the court of law, but in the meantime, the court of public opinion is certainly trying the case.
Yes, the world has been fascinated by this. We've watched these two huge celebrities take crazy shots and low blows at each other to essentially save the most important thing in this industry, which is their reputation.
It's kind of giving Taylor Swift. And it's hard to know who to believe, but it's just funny that these allegations are such a 180 from the public personas. Justin has literally devoted himself publicly to being this man that listens to women and tells women's stories and like kind of the quintessential male feminist. And now he has accusations of sexual harassment against him.
And Blake has really pushed this likable golden girl, like sunny image, but now these claims are painting her as this like vicious, power-hungry diva.
And these lawsuits have exposed these like behind-the-scenes puppet masters who are apparently pulling the strings, you know, waging smear campaigns and planting false stories.
Right, these shadowy Hollywood PR crisis firms have found themselves at the center of this very complicated legal battle. And this all started when Blake filed lawsuits against Justin, his production company, and PR team in December for sexual harassment and harming her reputation by waging a digital smear campaign against her.
Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively worked together on the film adaptation of Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel, It Ends With Us. Blake Lively played the female protagonist, Lily. Justin Baldoni played the leading man, Ryle. He also directed the film.
We all have an idea of what love can be.
I want to see you again.
Now you see me.
You know what I mean.
But 15 seconds. That's all it takes to completely change everything.
And while the movie was in production, a rift started to form between the two stars. So Blake alleges that Justin repeatedly violated her physical boundaries and made inappropriate comments towards her, while Justin alleges that Blake tried to take over the movie, even citing how she used her A-list husband Ryan Reynolds and best friend Taylor Swift to push her agenda.
Oh my gosh, don't get us started on that Khaleesi text where she calls Ryan and Taylor her dragons.
That was so cringe, oh my god.
But despite it all, the movie was a hit. It grossed $350 million. But during the promo for the film, everything started to hit the fan. So the first sign that something was off was when the stars and director wouldn't do any promotion together.
And that set the internet sleuths digging. They found that none of the cast or the author followed Justin on social media. They also found that Justin was the only one talking about domestic violence in the press, while Blake was talking about like the fashion elements and promoting her new hair care line. And when asked if he would direct a sequel, he cryptically answered,
I think there are better people for that one.
Justin!
I think Blake Lively's ready to direct. That's what I think. So, yeah.
And then all these articles started coming out saying that Blake was a menace on the set of the movie. And then old interview clips of her started resurfacing where she made snide or even problematic comments. And then, of course, the infamous baby bump interview from 2016 was posted.
First of all, congrats on your little bump.
Congrats on your little bump.
Did you guys love wearing those kind of clothes that you...
Yeah. And working in digital.
Everyone wants to talk about the clothes, but I wonder if they would ask the men about the clothes.
And people had been taking different sides throughout all of this, but now it seemed like the entire world was against Blake. The Daily Mail even published an article, "Is Blake Lively set to be canceled?"
It just seemed like a textbook cancellation. It started small and then people just kept dogpiling organically, and effectively she was canceled for a couple months until Blake filed her complaint last month, alleging the entire thing was a smear campaign orchestrated by Justin's PR rep and a crisis PR firm that they hired, which actually had represented Johnny Depp in his legal battle against Amber Heard.
Blake says Justin's PR team activated an astroturfing campaign against her. So astroturf is, of course, synthetic grass. So this strategy includes creating the illusion of like widespread grassroots support for something that's actually false and manufactured.
Blake even includes screenshots of an alleged $175,000 untraceable campaign to start threads of theories on platforms like Reddit and TikTok in Justin's favor, even modeling part of the operation after trolls who successfully painted Hailey Bieber as a bully.
Blake also alleges that they planted articles about her. So remember that Daily Mail article that said Blake Lively was canceled? So her lawsuit includes texts where Justin's PR team talks about it, saying, "Wow, you really outdid yourself with this piece," with a response to the text saying, "That's why you hired me, right? I'm the best."
And when her complaint came out, which also included the sexual harassment accusations, it was explosive. I mean, she literally has a screenshot where Justin's crisis PR rep allegedly says, "You know we can bury anyone, we will destroy her."
Then public opinion completely swung over in favor of Blake, and everyone was on her side and felt so like bad and lame for falling for this PR tactic until Justin came out with his lawsuit a couple weeks ago, where he is suing Blake, her publicist, PR team, and husband Ryan Reynolds for $400 million in damages.
In the suit, he and his PR reps claim they did not orchestrate any smear campaign or plant any articles, and instead the internet kind of did the job for them and ran with it organically.
In it, Justin also claims that Blake never read the book but still took over the entire movie and pushed him out. He also claims that she rewrote scenes and took over wardrobe so she could get expensive shoes, and that she even made a different cut of the movie. And this is where it gets complicated because allegedly she said that she wouldn't do any press if the studio didn't release her cut of the movie, and since she's the big star, it was basically like holding the movie hostage.
He also claims that he and his family were forced to watch the movie premiere in the basement of the movie theater because Blake didn't want him in the theater with her, and that the character Nice Pool in Ryan Reynolds' movie Deadpool and Wolverine was actually mocking him, this like performative male feminist with a man bun.
In response to Justin's lawsuit, Blake centers her response around her sexual harassment allegations, saying, "This is an age-old story. A woman speaks up with concrete evidence of sexual harassment and retaliation, and the abuser attempts to turn the tables on the victim."
And he, of course, vehemently denies the sexual harassment allegations and is actually suing the New York Times for $250 million in damages. He said Blake and the Times colluded to prepare a false and damaging narrative and make him the real-life villain in her story.
This list could truly go on forever. There are so many allegations of like fat shaming and breaking contracts and people saying explicit comments that we just can't get into. But what we're really interested in are the suspicious PR tactics that were used in this case and became kind of central to the whole story, because even PR experts call this whole saga a black eye for the industry.
Were we all manipulated? Like, did we all fall for this narrative that was fed to us? Or did people take Justin's side organically?
To get all our questions answered on this mysterious industry, we spoke with Kelsey Kinter, the Senior VP of Crisis Communications at the PR firm Red Banyan. So to just start off, can you tell us what a crisis PR firm is?
A crisis PR firm is basically a firm that helps people get out their narrative, and it usually needs to be done very quickly. So let's say someone is involved in litigation, or they're getting canceled on social media, or they've been accused of something and it hits social media or it hits the press, and they want to make sure that they get their narrative into all the coverage as quickly as possible. That's usually when they would call a crisis PR firm.
Could you give us some examples of like different kind of typical actions that a crisis PR rep would do?
So people are often really panicked. People's first intuitive response when they're being accused of something they didn't do is to want to just shout it to the world. But often there's so much going on with social media, and like we have information coming at us all day, right? So you always want to try to communicate with just the people who need to know, not the entire world, or else what happens is you end up amplifying your own sort of bad news.
So shifting into the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni lawsuits, when you first read about what was going on, what was your first reaction?
Well, my first reaction was those texts are insane. I could not believe they put it in writing. I would say like basic crisis PR 101 is you never put anything in writing that you wouldn't feel comfortable being pushed out externally. I really couldn't believe that anyone had texted that. It's also just extremely unethical. You're off the rails, is my opinion.
And there were a lot of shocking allegations made, especially in Blake's lawsuit against Justin. I didn't even know astroturfing was a thing. Is that a common practice or is that frowned upon?
I wouldn't say it's a common practice. I have often heard about it more in regards to sort of a political campaign or a political agenda, not really when it comes to celebrities. And you really have to do a lot of digging. They're counting on the fact that people are scrolling on their phone, looking at articles, and they're not kind of looking at the back end. Oh, well, who's behind this site? Who's behind this organization? Is this really a grassroots?
And how responsible is the celebrity for like how hard his or her crisis PR like firm goes?
I think he was very involved in giving the green light. It's hard to imagine a PR firm going rogue and deciding to quote bury somebody without that coming from the client. I mean, at the end of the day, who's paying the bills? The client, right? I mean, at Red Banyan, it's a very collaborative effort between the client, legal, and ourselves.
And I think right now something that we're all feeling is kind of whiplash. It's like one day we're hearing Blake's side and then Justin, and he's denying everything and saying actually her side was doing a campaign against him. Who are you believing right now?
Well, my disclaimer is I don't really know, but I will say this, that's a tactic. Right? Making it so convoluted, and I think you see this in politics as well, making a situation so convoluted that you don't know what the truth is anymore is actually a tactic. Felt that Justin Baldoni did a really good job in the beginning. And if you saw, there was this like feel of, is Blake Lively getting canceled, right? All of that. And I felt that he really had the advantage in the beginning, just from a PR standpoint. I'm not speaking to the legal aspect. And then the tides changed. I felt that when she filed the complaint, followed up by the lawsuit, it really changed. And then all these celebrities, all these people that had worked for her came out and supported her. This will be settled because both of them are going to just want to make this whole thing go away. My bets are on Blake Lively to come out ahead on this because, first of all, just she has a lot of power in terms of how successful she is, and she's married to someone extremely successful.
So in this post like Me Too era, when sexual harassment claims are a part of the situation, how do you think that changes the PR tactics on the opposing side?
I think that in post Me Too, you need to be delicate. I think you initially believe women. I think that's what Me Too did, that people were like, oh, okay, there's some really famous people doing some really bad things. And you cannot appear to be just bashing a victim. You can say, look, this isn't true. But I think if you really target the individual and really go after the individual, it does not play favorably for you in PR.
Wren and I just got to try lab-grown chicken.
Yes, two of the first people in the world, and we learned that they actually prefer the term cultivated chicken.
Roll the tapes.
All right, we are at the Upside Food event. We're about to taste cultivated chicken for the first time. Thrilled. Mabel, what do you think it's going to taste like?
I hope it tastes like normal bland chicken.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm expecting chicken, and if it's anything but chicken, I'll be very sad.
Yes, we'll keep you posted. Taco time. We were told that this was a shawarma taco and the chicken was like marinated in yogurt overnight and spices.
Good.
Oh, good. Yeah.
It really just tastes like chicken.
Yeah, it's like there's not much to say. Yeah, like I would eat this. I would have it.
So it tasted, trigger warning, moist. Like it didn't taste artificial or like bendy vegan chicken. I would have totally believed that it was real.
But the whole idea of lab-grown chicken is gross to people. Like, my mom literally won't let me tell her about it.
Yeah, even people in the food industry admit that there's like this ick factor, but that hasn't stopped more than 100 companies around the world from trying to create cultivated proteins, from lab-grown lamb to oysters to even foie gras, which I think is taking it a little too far.
And one of the originals and biggest companies is Upside Foods, which is headquartered in San Francisco. It's the one that we tried. It was actually founded by a cardiologist who grew heart tissue outside the body.
And he helped start this whole industry. And now Upside is one of the 2 companies in the US that actually have approvals from the FDA and USDA to sell cultivated meat.
Right now, the only place that you can buy it at the store is in Singapore, even though it is available in pet food in the UK, but Upside hopes to have their meat in US grocery stores by next year.
And we've seen it on the menu at a couple high-end restaurants in the US, like a Michelin star restaurant in San Francisco and a Jose Andres restaurant in DC.
And at private tastings like the one that we went to.
And at this point, you're all definitely wondering, literally, how do you create fake chicken cells? Like, what is going on here? So we spoke with Jessica Halper from the research and development team at Upside Foods.
So can you walk us through how the cultivated chicken is actually made?
So you find an animal or an egg, which was a chicken in this case for us, and you take just a small sample of cells that the animal hardly notices. Our team then will go ahead and select the best cells from that sample. We then take those cells and we put them in this giant stainless steel tank, which basically looks like what you would make beer or yogurt in. And we make the cells nice and cozy, and we feed them a bath of nutrients. It's sugars and amino acids and salts and vitamins. It's really like creating the chicken outside the chicken's body. So creating kind of a chicken in stainless steel. And the cells grow and they multiply as cells do. And after only about 2 weeks, the meat is ready. And it's removed from the tank, it's washed, and it's processed into whatever desired form a customer wants. So that could be sort of shredded chicken or a chicken strip, which is what I think you guys tasted.
So we know there's different like percentages of cells in different products.
Yeah.
Can you explain how that works?
Yeah, I mean, so we have 2 products in our portfolio. So we have one product that basically looks like a very thin chicken breast, and that's upwards of 99% chicken cells. So
Wow.
that's really our very limited North Star product. The product that you guys tried is a mix, right? And that's going to be very common in the industry. And what it does is it allows more consumers to kind of taste that magic, but at a much more affordable price point, because our goal is to get this into as many mouths as possible. It does have plant-based ingredients, which kind of help bind it, give it body, because I think what's interesting about this, the science is like there's no bone, right? There's something that it's attaching to or growing to. So as of right now, it does have some soy. It does have some gluten. We're trying to get the gluten out because, we don't want the top 2 allergens in our product.
So can you tell us about some of the benefits of cultivated chicken?
Well, I think the animal welfare benefits are obvious. You get to enjoy chicken without killing a chicken. Significant reductions in land, in water usage, in greenhouse gas emissions. It's also incredibly safe, right? Because the cells come from a sterile environment. There's no animal involved. And when there's no animal involved, there's no feathers, there's no beaks, there's no intestines, like not to get super gross here, but like you don't pull in salmonella or E. coli or the things that you find in sort of traditional animal agriculture. Right?
So as Jess said, there's lots of upsides, pun intended. So let's unpack them. Her last point, that it's safer, is important right now with the bird flu that's spreading from animal contact.
Another obvious reason that this will be a draw for so many people is the prevention of animal cruelty. So currently 80 billion animals are slaughtered every year for meat, and we pump so many hormones into them. This was disturbing that an 8-week-old chicken today is about 4 times heavier than an 8-week-old chicken was 60 years ago. Their breasts are so large that they have a hard time even standing.
The environmental impact of the meat industry is another pro in the cultivated column. So listen to these insane stats. Meat production accounts for 14% of all greenhouse gas emissions, uses 1/3 of all fresh water on Earth, and 1/3 of ice-free land. Basically, every part of the meat production life cycle leaves a mark, like from cattle releasing methane to converting forests into animal pasture to using electricity to ventilate and cool the stalls.
Cultivated meat is also really appetizing get it, to food insecure countries like Israel, the UAE, and Singapore. So these countries don't have thriving agricultural industries and actually import most of their food. So Singapore actually imports over 90% of their food. And there have been so many interruptions recently in the global food supply chain, like COVID and all of these wars and global warming. So these countries are worried about like running out of food. So they are some of the first to really push for cultivated meat in markets.
But not everyone is for it. So Florida became the first state to ban the sale of cultivated meat last year. This is what DeSantis said at the time.
So it is designed to represent a threat to agriculture as we know it. Take your fake lab-grown meat elsewhere. We're not doing that in the state of Florida.
But Upside is fighting back because DeSantis's goal was to protect farmers from cultivated competition. But Florida doesn't have any cultivated meat companies, so they're essentially banning out-of-state competition, which violates the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, which grants only Congress the power to regulate interstate commerce. So Upside has filed a suit against the state.
Yeah, I don't know about banning it, but I do get why so many people are worried about their jobs. So the meat industry is actually a $1 trillion global industry, and a lot of these cultivated meat critics cite almond milk and how it was a huge disruption to the milk and dairy industry, and this is something that they're really scared of.
Well, following Florida's lead, Alabama became the second state to ban the sale of lab-grown meat, and bans are being considered in Nebraska, Arizona, and Tennessee. And Iowa passed legislation prohibiting lab-grown food from being labeled as meat.
And because the cultivated meat industry is so new, people are skeptical about what's actually being used to grow the chicken in these bioreactors. So in our research, we found that a lot of companies use this like secret chemical growth serum, which is taken from the blood of fetuses in pregnant cows. And Upside is actually proud for being one of the first companies to completely phase that out. They don't use that anymore. So there is that. And then there's also skepticism about whether lab-grown meat is actually better for the environment because those bioreactors actually use up so much electricity.
Since none of these cultivated meat companies are producing large quantities, it's hard to gauge exactly how big the footprint will be. But a study found that lab-grown beef could have up to 25 times the carbon emissions of real beef, meaning it's only going to be environmentally beneficial if they use solar or wind or some kind of renewable energy.
Yeah, there are a lot of complicated moving parts to this industry, and I feel like what makes it even trickier is that we're talking about creating something on a cellular level, so people have a lot of problems with it in terms of like ethics and morals as well.
Yeah, some people are really against it, some people are really for it. Upside says they have the best luck with ethical vegans or wannabe vegans or environmentalists, so there is definitely some market for it.
As for pricing, lab-grown meat is going to cost $17 per pound to produce, as opposed to $3 per pound for regular chicken, so we can assume that this will become more expensive, although Upside does say that it's a priority for them to make their products affordable.
We asked Jess about the future of cultivated meat.
I think the promise of this industry is like you could have a steak that has the nutritional profile of salmon. We've heard loud and clear from consumers that like they're okay with some sci-fi, but not like too much sci-fi yet.
And we heard at the event that the next frontier is beef.
Yes.
So is that in production right now?
Yeah. So beef is really exciting for us. Like people have a lot of feelings around beef and a lot of feelings around how they like their burger to taste. So we started the beef program like a year ago, and it's gone pretty fast.
There's been this like huge push recently, like a health push towards like whole foods and like natural foods. Is this chicken considered like processed, ultra processed? And how do you like market that then?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get that question all the time. You know, I'll be really transparent. Like this is high-tech food. We can't hide the fact that it's made in a lab because it's made in a lab. If you're someone that really enjoys, you know, eating only from the land or the ground, this may not be for you right now. You know, we position ourselves as an and, like we're not an or. Like we just want to be another choice for people.
Thanks for tuning in on this historic week.
Watch or listen next week for a really cool segment on the AI modeling industry.
Bye.